Joining with more is former Israeli ambassador to the UN and chair of the World Likud organization, and former ambassador Danon. Dani, thank you so much for being with us. Now, starting with Bennett's trip to Moscow, do you think that Bennett had any expectations that he would actually succeed in drawing up a ceasefire?
Thank you for having me. I think we all agree that we have to do everything in our power to de-escalate the situation. So we should not raise expectations. We should not speak too much about it. You know, from my experience, if you want to be actually a successful mediator, you have to be discreet and to gain the trust and respect of both sides. So I think we should wait, but at the same time, we should not raise the expectations, mainly not in Ukraine. For the people of Ukraine, we see the horrible pictures, and at the same time that Mr. Putin is negotiating or meeting global leaders, the forces of the Red Army are moving into more cities in Ukraine.
So again, though, why Naftali Bennett and not some other world leaders? Surely he's not the only one who is more or less neutral.
We have a close relationship with both nations. We have a lot of cooperation with the Russians, mainly regarding security issues in the north. We have a mechanism to coordinate things with them. So I think, yes, it makes sense to make advantage of the fact that we have an ongoing communication, both with the Russians and the Ukrainians. There were some requests in the past to check whether we can mediate. And I say it again, you know, the last thing we want to do now is to raise expectations and to create the atmosphere that here we come, the Israelis, to bring peace to the region. You know, in order to achieve real compromise, you need both sides to be willing to do it. And I'm not sure that today you have the willingness from both sides to reach a ceasefire.
All right, so, you know, as I mentioned, Israel has been trying to walk this tightrope between Russia and the West. The foreign ministry even repeating that we need to keep open channels with both sides. But at the United Nations, Israel voted with the West to condemn Russia. Was Israel right to vote in favor of that resolution, or should we have abstained?
No, I think it was the right decision. We joined 140 countries at the UN condemning the attack on the Ukrainians. I think it was the right decision, and I think we should not make any headlines. We should not attack Putin and the Russians, but when you have to take a vote, you cannot sit idly by. At the same time, I think we should increase our humanitarian efforts to support the Ukrainian people, and we should get ready for waves of immigration of Jewish immigrants coming not only from Ukraine, but also from Russia. We see the sanctions, the crippling sanctions, and I can anticipate that we're going to have tens of thousands of Jews, not only from Ukraine, but also from Russia, coming to Israel.
All right, so, you know, while Israel may or may not need to remain neutral, should NATO get more involved in this conflict? You know, we have from the United States, Antony Blinken saying that a no-fly zone over Ukraine, for example, as Zelensky is requesting, could lead to a full-fledged war across Europe. But there's no guarantee that the war won't spread anyway. You know, and again, this likens to the appeasement campaign during World War II. It didn't work then, and there's no evidence that it would work now. So again, should NATO get more involved?
I don't think it should be our position to give instructions to NATO what to do or not to do. But if you read the charter of NATO, you know, it's an alliance between member states, and Ukraine, it's not a member state. But we have seen involvement of Western democracies in the past, in other regions, in places where they were not member of NATO. So I think it also depends on what will happen on the ground. Technically, legally, when you look at the charter, there is no reason for NATO to respond as we speak. But the more videos we will see of a horrible humanitarian crisis, I think it will be very hard to NATO leaders to stay silent.
So in the same vein, is the West in general perhaps being too lenient on Russia? Biden, for example, still buying billions of barrels of oil from Moscow.
I think the sanctions are working. You know, probably you will not hear anyone in Russia admitting it, but I think that they are working. It takes time for them to be effective. But today, when you look at the markets in Russia, I think they start to understand that maybe they went too far and they have to recalculate their position.
All right, Ambassador Danon, thank you so much for joining us again today.
Thank you very much.
ILTV Plus, your news from Israel and more 24/7. Start your free trial today. Subscribe at iltv.tv and watch from any device.